Hey guys, we're going to talk today about a serial killer, one of my favorite cases that I like to research and investigate. And one of the guys that I've talked to at length and received a lot of stuff from. And his name is Dennis Rader. He is known as B.T.K, the bind, torture, kill, strangler, or known as bind, torture, kill, B.T.K.
B.T.K stood for bind, torture, kill, and that was his M.O.
3 letters which can touch off memories for anyone who lived in Wichita during the 1970s.
B.T.K emerged in 1974.
When B.T.K came forward, everybody's life changed.
It was really part of Wichita's history.
The B.T.K killings changed the way people lived in Wichita.
It changed Wichita from a sleepy little friendly town into a place in a city where you now lock your door and you check your phone to make sure you have a dial tone.
They're asking that anyone with information on this case, please call our Crime Stoppers line.
The body was discovered here.
I think we'll solve the crime. The question is, when will we solve the crime?
Okay. You can Google these stories. I don't make these videos to tell you all about the case because there's been hundreds and hundreds of videos and articles and documentaries made. But Dennis Rader is an interesting guy. Raised in a normal religious family, he grows up. He marries his high school sweetheart. He buys a house in Park City. By the way, when I talk about these cases, guys, I've been to his house. I've been to his work. I've been to every single house that he strangled and killed a woman at. I've been in, to that crime scene. I've stood outside of the house and took the street in. I'm trying to get a mindset of who would kill someone in this house, in this neighborhood, and think they can get away with it. So yes, I've been to Wichita, I've been to Park City, I've been to Dennis Rader's house, his workplace, his church, all of those locations. And so when I talk about the case, I put myself back there as I'm talking, like I've been, I stood where he lived. I mean, I can stand and look at his house. There's no longer a house there, but it's a vacant lot. And I could look, 3, 4 doors down and see he actually killed that neighbor in that house. It's crazy when you look at it like that. So Dennis Rader marries his high school sweetheart, buys a house in Park City, he has a son and a daughter, raises a family. And he is the Christ Lutheran Church president of the church. He is the Boy Scout leader. He actually works for ADT for a while, and when you call and have your security system put in, Dennis Rader shows up with the name tag that says Dennis on his ADT shirt. And as you're talking about how worried you are about BTK, BTK is standing in the house with you, putting in your system. That's how normal he is. He ends up killing 10 victims. I talk a lot in my training, when I talk about serial killers, I talk about MO, the modus operandi, and their signature, okay? A signature is their calling card. Okay, that's what they leave at the scene. It's their calling card. Like that separates them from other serial killers. For example, the Manson family, they killed their victims in all sorts of ways. Stabbing, shooting, hanging, strangling. But their signature was they wrote in blood on both of the walls of both crime scenes. They wrote in blood on the walls of both crime scenes. So their signature was the writing in blood on the walls. That connected both of the cases. Their MO changes. And this is one thing a lot of people don't know. You guys, listen, the MO, the modus operandi, changes often. So a lot of people have the belief, because they've read a couple books or whatever, that, serial killers don't change their MO. That's a myth. I have like 10 or 15 myths in my new book coming out. That's one of the myths. MO never changes. Actually, MO changes often. So we'll see that a lot. One serial killer will strangle one victim. He'll beat the next victim. He'll drown the next victim. He'll stab the next victim. And it throws law enforcement off because they think that there's 4 killers out. No, it's the same area, the same sort of victim, probably a serial killer, just changing his MO. Dennis Rader is one of those guys I talk about. So Dennis Rader, his first 7 victims, he killed them inside their homes, and he left their bodies inside their homes. The last 3 victims he killed, he actually took with him, put in plastic, threw them in his vehicle, and took them with him. He completely changed his MO. And the Wichita police were looking for 2 serial killers at that time. The guy that killed 7, the guy that killed 3. It is the same guy. I would have told him that. Same type of victim, same type of area. Had to be the same guy. He just changed his MO. But some people can't get past that. So Dennis Rader had a signature too. So one of his signatures was he would like to bind his victims, just like he said in his nickname, bind, torture, kill. His victims were all bound, their ankles, their knees. His signature is he would bind the knees. Not many people bind the knees. That's kind of rare. He would bind the hands behind the back. His youngest victim was 12 years old, and she was hung from a basement water pipe. But if you notice, her legs were bound, her knees were bound, and her hands were bound behind her back. That is his signature. Also, his signature is he uses one certain knot. All right, he likes the clove hitch knot, and that's going to be his signature. So the clove hitch knot, the bindings are Dennis Rader's signature. His MO changes. One of his victims were shot. Most of them were strangled. Some were taken, some were not. His MO changed. I want to share a couple things. I talked to Dennis Rader at length on the phone. My wife and I talked to him a lot. He seemed very cordial, very, very nice, actually. He never was inappropriate with us at all. I would get a lot of letters from Dennis Rader. This is an example of a letter written to Phil and Wendy, as you can see there. And he always puts weird stuff and drawings. And this is his like his book print. Just always weird stuff like this. We see this a lot from Rader when he sends letters. He loved to draw. This is one of his drawings. I guess this is supposed to be one of his drawings of Hitler. And you can see that there. And on the back, it has his logos. Weird stuff on the back. Actually, Ron, don't include that. That's a logo of somebody who sold this piece. So let's not use that. If you look closely, see if I can get this to work on camera here, you can see Rader's logo. So right here, let's see if we can get it to work. There's his logo. And it looks like a set, if you turn it, it looks like a set of breasts. It says B.T.K, but it looks like a set of breasts too. That's part of his weird logo. This is Dennis Rader. Dennis Rader's drawing of Hitler. Kind of strange. This is a picture of Dennis Rader that I have in my office, and he doesn't do this anymore, but he signed this letter. Let me see if I can get it to work here. On the bottom there, it's signed by Dennis Rader. There it is. It says Dennis Rader, also known as B.T.K. The reason that's a rare autograph and signature of Dennis Rader is he doesn't sign that as B.T.K. He's not allowed to. So this is kind of a rare piece signed by Dennis Rader, calling himself B.T.K. Just a little photo that I have in my office.
Rare glimpse inside the mind of a serial murderer. The B.T.K. killer terrorized Wichita, Kansas for 3 decades. Now, in a jailhouse interview, you'll hear directly from him how and why he committed these gruesome crimes. Here's Dateline NBC's Edie Magnus.
B.T.K. seemed uncatchable. Everyone wondered who he was, where he was, until just a few months ago, when a most unlikely man who'd lived among them all along, Dennis Rader, was arrested.
I am B.T.K. And I'm the guy they're after, 100%.
This interview, obtained by Dateline after it was done, was conducted by a Harvard-trained forensic psychologist, Robert Mendoza, who performs more than 100 evaluations for criminal and civil cases each year. He was hired by the defense team to assess Rader's sanity.
I got this fantasy. I started working out this fantasy in my mind. And once that person become a fantasy, I could just loop it over. I'd lay in bed at night thinking about this person, the events, and how it's going to happen. And it became a real, almost like a picture show. You know, I wanted to go ahead and produce it, direct it, and go through with it, no matter what the costs were, the consequences. It was going to happen one way or another.
No one knows for sure why Rader had to kill to fulfill those fantasies. In this interview with the psychologist, Rader dismisses each victim as a project. He says he'd begin by stalking.
Stalking stage is when you start learning more about your victims, potential victims. Went to the library, I looked up their names, that address, cross-referenced, called them a couple of times. drove by there whenever I could.
And each time he struck, Rader said he was armed with what he calls his hit kit.
Did your hit kit contain what? Plastic bags, rope, tape, knife, gun. All those wouldn't be in the kit. They'd be where I could have them in the house and together or not.
Tools that would come to define the work of B.T.K. The victims were often discovered bound with tape or rope tied in unusual knots. In his jailhouse interview, Rader blamed his murder spree on that mysterious force he has always claimed was way beyond his control, Factor X.
Something that's, I use it, I actually think I'm maybe possessed with demons.
That I have in my office. Another really interesting thing I have is Dennis Rader would send dolls to the police to taunt them. He would send dolls to the media. He would put them, he would dress them up just like the victims were, that he had just killed the victim. He would dress a doll up like the victim. He would put a noose around its neck, or he would bind its legs and hands, and he would send it to the police or to send it to the media to try to shock them and tell them that he was the killer of this victim. I was able to acquire something from Dennis Rader's storage shed, which is pretty interesting, a doll head. So, would he have sent this doll to the police or the media? Maybe. It's kind of a creepy little doll head. Probably the kind of creepy doll head you might find in a serial killer's shed. This is the stuff horror movies are made out of, right? Doll head from Dennis Rader's storage shed, given to me by one of the detectives. And Dennis Rader had all kind of things he would use for masturbatory purposes. And he would cut, they would call his slicks or his ad slicks he would carry them around with him. One of his favorite detective magazines was this exact magazine. You could see where he would be turned on by this photo. These magazines have inspired a lot of killers: Ted Bundy, Ed Gein, Dennis Rader, John Wayne Gacy, and a lot of these guys like Ted Bundy as well. Ted Bundy would discover a treasure trove of these detective magazines and would later say this had a lot to do with why he did what he did. Ed Gein talked about it, but here you go. Dennis Rader loved these, and he really got off on this magazine. He would use this in between his murders to satisfy himself. And this is early pornography, and this is the exact magazine that Dennis Rader had. I'm trying to see if I can see a date on here. Oh, it's 1985. 1985. There you go. Dennis Rader, one of the most interesting serial killers in American history, still alive, serving a sentence in prison. He's not allowed to have contact visits. He's pretty much by himself in protective custody. If he was released from protective custody, he would be killed. I have visited El Dorado prison myself. I have met with the warden there. I have gotten a tour of the prison. I have really taken in. They have an amazing operation of workers there, of making T-shirts and stuff for Walmart and other big companies. But yeah, been to El Dorado prison, been to Dennis Rader's house, his workplace where he worked for the city of Park City, and I've been to every crime scene he killed someone at, and it is pretty eerie and pretty creepy to stand outside of a home that Dennis Rader killed 4 people inside, the Otero family, and standing on the street corner. It's creepy, but it definitely helps me understand these killers and understands their crimes. I look forward to bringing you more content, more killers, more information. Hopefully you'll learn something from this channel and you'll know more about why these people do what they do. And follow me, keep in touch, let me know what you think of this content, and please keep following, subscribe. Make sure you like our videos, comment on our videos, subscribe. Make sure you hit the notification bell. Stay in tune with us. I think you're going to learn something, and I think you're going to enjoy our content. Thanks a lot for watching.